Is Michigan in a worse spot than 2015 when Jim Harbaugh took over? And I said it's blasphemous. It's a dumb question. I'm not going to entertain it. But Jake, trying to make the argument, so the floor is yours.
Okay. So first, okay. The reason I presented this question is because I want to be realistic about what Sherrone Moore is inheriting as a head coach. I believe in him, and I can't wait to see what he does. But I do believe it's going to take some time because the context of, yes, they are the national champions of last year. The context of what he's inheriting is very interesting. Michigan's going to have they're going to set a record. The 2023 Michigan team is going to have the most players selected in a single NFL draft since the NFL draft started. They're losing a lot of talent. They're losing their head coach. They're losing their defensive coordinator, the second defensive coordinator they've lost since they started this run. They're losing their strength coach in Ben Herbert, who we both say played a huge part in turning the culture around and the program around. Now, I see what you're saying. Hey, this isn't 2015, because one of the biggest ceilings that Michigan had to break through was beating your rival, winning a conference title, and it's no easy task to win a playoff game and win a national championship.
Sure.
All those are big milestones, but Sherrone Moore now has to walk this walk as he starts the beginning of his head coaching career. In 2015, we hadn't beat our rival. I understand where the program was, but we returned a bunch of talent, a significant transfer portal quarterback. We had a proven head coach who's won everywhere he's been, bringing in his hand-picked NFL coordinators. I present the question because though we were 5-7 in 2014 when Jim Harbaugh got there, and though Michigan is coming off a national championship team, I think Sherrone Moore has his work cut out for him for what will be on this team next year.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. I do think that there's work cut out for him. I think that they have lost some momentum with some of the changes here, but I cannot say that they're in a bad spot. One of the things that you said was we cannot call Sherrone Moore a third base coach, which is what people like to call Ryan Day. Can I present to you some facts about Ryan Day when he took over at Ohio State? So I just want to make this clear. So Ryan Day takes a job at Ohio State. He's got to replace a wide receiver coach who was fired. So they bring in Brian Hartline. Obviously, he turned out to be a pretty good coach, but the dude was a rookie at the time he took that. Then they had to find a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator. Then they had to get a new defensive coordinator in because Ryan Day had to fire the old defensive coordinator, part of his staff. It means a new linebacker coach, a new secondary coach. Taking over a team 5 seasons removed from their championship, 3 seasons removed from their last CFP appearance where they got blown out 31-0 by Clemson. Don't forget about that. They got blown out the previous year by Purdue. That was a 49-20 score. They nearly lost to Maryland in overtime. That was a 52-51 score. See, a lot of points were given up because the defense that year was 71st nationally in total defense. They were 50th in scoring defense. They improved to number 1 in total defense in 19, Ryan Day's first year, and improved to number 4 in scoring defense in 2019 in Ryan Day's first year. He had to replace a quarterback that had one of the best statistical seasons we had ever seen in the Big Ten. 50 touchdowns, a guy who was a Heisman finalist, and a guy who was a first-round pick. Shout out to Dwayne Haskins. May you rest in peace. So we call that man third base coach. It wasn't like Ohio State was coming off of the championship. Everything was ready-made. There were some issues. And I'm not saying they were big issues. I'm not saying they were insurmountable. And I'm not saying Ryan Day didn't inherit a phenomenal situation where maybe he hasn't maximized it at this point. But we're not going to sit here and act like the situation that Ryan Day inherited was like 1,000 times better than what's going on at Michigan. I would say Sherrone Moore is walking into a spot where certainly he has to make some staff changes. Ryan Day did as well. You know how many dudes on that defense are coming back that anybody would want to have? You got a couple guys in that safety room that are ballers. You got the best corner in college football. You might have the best interior defensive line in college football. You also got a running back who is extremely talented, has not been consistent, very talented. And I told you how I feel about Colston Loveland, potentially best tight end in the country. Well, I mean, yeah, you're a head coach. These are things head coaches have to do. You got to hire the staff. You got to replace some guys. Like, departures are natural. You got to make sure that the people stay on the roster. These are things all head coaches deal with right now. I am not going to entertain the fact that Sherrone Moore isn't walking into a situation that many coaches would want to have. These are good problems to have. You can hire and retain and attract just about anybody at the University of Michigan. He's making $5.5 million a year. They were getting ready to pay the other guy $12. They got plenty of money to go out and get the coaches that you need. It's a wild thing to sit here and say that, oh man, you know, Sherrone, he's up against it. Everybody's up against it. And I think he's the right guy to get the job done, honestly.
Yeah, and you can sit here and say, I agree, they have a great interior defensive line. I agree Will Johnson's the best corner in college football, and I agree they got a great safety room. But let's keep going just on the defensive side of the ball. You lost your nickel, the heartbeat of your defense, your leader, Mikey Sainristil. You lost your two other leaders, your interior linebackers. You lost two edges. I know you returned a few edges. You lost two edges. Then let's go to the offensive side of the ball. You lost your captain and your other captain. You lost your entire interior. You lost Ladarius Henderson and Carson Barnhart, 2 tackles. You lost your other leader in Blake Corum. I get it. Donovan Edwards I agree, he's extremely talented. I also like Khalil Mullings. Blake Corum, you lose. J.J. McCarthy, you lose. You lose your top 2 receivers. You lose one half of one of the better tight end rooms. I love Colson Loveland. A.J. Barner was a stud, extremely underrated as a blocker. You lose your head coach. You now lose both coordinators. You lose your strength coach. And you're in the world of the transfer portal, which what we just saw with Alabama is the roster gets rated. I think we saw a bunch of tweets, maybe more tweets when Ben Herbert left than when Sherrone Moore and Jim Harbaugh left. Those players love Ben Herbert. That's a significant development in this equation. The world has changed. I'm not saying Sherrone Moore has inherited a bad situation by any stretch of the imagination, but I see some people starting to plant seeds so they can eventually tear him down, that Sherrone Moore is inheriting a program that's on the flying high and set up to win national title after national title. There's a tough road ahead for Sherrone Moore at Michigan, a very tough road ahead. And this is his first year as a head coach, where the expectations are sky high, but what he's inheriting, it's going to be a challenge, make no mistake about it.
I don't think anybody's sitting here saying that Sherrone Moore should win a national title in year one. I think we're sitting here saying that he was 4-0. It's the thing that every Michigan fan loved to talk about. He's 4-0 as a head coach with 2 top 10 wins. He beat his rival. He's got as many wins in the game as Ryan Day. Like, these are all the things that y'all have said. And you mentioned some of the departures. J.J. McCarthy's guy who left for the draft early, could have come back. I understand that. A lot of the guys that left, 4th, 5th, or 6th-year guys, been in the program forever. All I heard about was depth all year long. So there should be some guys developed, ready to go behind them. Yes or no? Like, you played a million guys because some of these games were out of hand. And so, like, again, I think Sherrone Moore is entering a situation where maybe there are unknowns. These are also guys who had an inordinate amount of reps for dudes who aren't starters. So he should be fine from a roster standpoint. Quarterback is going to be a question. It was a question for Ryan Day. Thing I didn't put down on here. You had Dwayne Haskins, 50 touchdowns, walked out the door. What did Ryan Day do? He went and got another one, found a Justin Fields who ended up being a first-round pick and a Heisman finalist. So you have the opportunity to do these things too if you're the University of Michigan coming off of a national title. It seems like something you should be able to do. Like, I think there's so much momentum that you can capitalize on as a program, and I understand it's not the guy who was there. But everybody told me, all the dudes in that locker room love Sherrone Moore, and I believe them. You know who the best recruiters are in the program? The guys on the damn roster, because you get the recruits on campus and you let them talk to the players in the locker room, and if they vouch for Sherrone the way that everybody has been vouching for him, which he deserves to be vouched for, then you get the guys that you're looking for.
Okay. First off, you're right. He does have momentum. And it is his responsibility to go find a Justin Fields at that point. Like, that is now the challenge of a head coach. That is what he has to do. And you're right, Sherrone Moore, 4-0 as a head coach. He was part of that equation. Jesse Minter was still the defensive coordinator. There were still 15 guys on that roster that will hear their name called at the end of April that will not be there next fall. And yes, it's his job as a head coach to replace that talent. It is his job as a head coach to find those next coordinators. That is the #1 challenge he has going ahead of him. But again, the argument you're making, I can just see that this is being set up. There's going to be significant pressure on Sherrone Moore next year because people cannot wait to see Michigan regress. There's going to be
pressure on Sherrone Moore because it's the University of Michigan, and every coach that walks in there is under pressure.
Sure, but there will be added pressure because
but it's also how you get to the situation in Columbus where Ryan Day gets you 11 wins a year, and people are talking about he can't do the job, right? This is what he's walking into, and it's a good situation. We should be realistic about it. One of the conversations we did have on the call is we're looking down this schedule. You got a Texas team that's going to be a tough one out of conference.
Piece of it.
You got Oregon, you got USC, you got Washington, you have Ohio State. Those are 5 games that they could realistically lose. I do not believe they lose all 5 of them. I think they might lose 2 or 3 of them. It's a 9-win team.